Judgment is something we all experience, both from within and from others. It happens so naturally that we often don't even notice it. We judge people based on their appearance, their actions, their words. We judge ourselves for our mistakes, our failures, and even for things beyond our control. But have you ever stopped to ask, what does judgment really bring into our lives? When we judge, we create a kind of burden for ourselves. It might seem like we are just making observations, but in reality, judgment shapes the way we see the world. It colors our emotions, our thoughts, and even our sense of peace. When we judge someone harshly, we might feel a momentary sense of superiority. But soon, that judgment turns into negativity within us. It creates frustration, irritation, or even anger. The same happens when we judge ourselves. We criticize our past, our actions, our very nature. And in doing so, we carry unnecessary pain. Imagine you are holding a heavy rock in your hands. At first, it may not seem like a big problem, but as time passes, your arms grow tired. The weight becomes unbearable. Judgment is like that rock. The longer we hold on to it, the heavier it becomes. It does not serve us. It only drains our energy and prevents us from experiencing life fully. Some people believe that judgment is necessary for survival. They think that without it, we would not be able to make good decisions. But non-judgment does not mean blindness. It does not mean ignoring reality. Instead, it is about seeing things clearly, without attaching unnecessary emotions or assumptions. It is about recognizing what is in front of us, without labeling it as good or bad. When we free ourselves from judgment, we make space for something else, understanding. Instead of reacting with criticism, we respond with curiosity. Instead of feeling superior or inferior, we simply acknowledge what is. This shift brings a kind of lightness, a sense of relief. We are no longer carrying the heavy rock. So I invite you to reflect. How often do you judge? How does it make you feel? And what might happen if, just for a moment, you put the rock down? Judgment does not appear out of nowhere. It has roots, deep and complex ones, that shape the way we see the world. When we judge someone, we often believe that it is simply our opinion, our personal view. But in reality, much of our judgment is not truly our own. It has been given to us by others, our families, our culture, our society. Think back to your childhood. From an early age, we are taught what is right and what is wrong. We learn how we should behave, what is acceptable and what is not. Sometimes these lessons are helpful. They teach us how to live together peacefully, but at other times they create barriers. They teach us to separate people into categories: good and bad, worthy and unworthy, successful and unsuccessful. Over time, we absorb these judgments without question. We assume they are the truth. Society also plays a powerful role. Every culture has its own ideas about beauty, intelligence, success, and morality. These ideas are everywhere, on television, in books, in conversations. We grow up surrounded by messages that tell us who we should be and how others should act. Without realizing it, we start using these messages to judge ourselves and the people around us. Personal experiences shape our judgments as well. If someone has hurt us in the past, we may start to believe that all people like them will do the same. If we have been criticized for something, we may begin to criticize others for similar reasons. We carry these experiences with us, and they influence the way we see the world. But here is the truth. Judgment is not reality. It is a habit, a pattern of thought. It is something we have learned over time, and that means it is also something we can change. We do not have to let these inherited ideas control how we think or feel. When we recognize where our judgments come from, we gain the power to question them. Are they truly our own? Are they helpful? Or are they simply causing pain? This awareness is the first step toward freedom. We do not have to carry the weight of unnecessary judgment. We can choose to see with fresh eyes, to meet people as they are, without the filters of past conditioning. And so I ask you, what judgments have you inherited? Are they serving you, or is it time to let them go? When we judge, we create distance between ourselves and others, between who we are and who we think we should be. Judgment makes us feel separate, as if we are standing on one side, looking down on someone else from above. But this separation is not real. It is an illusion, created by our minds. Think about the last time you judged someone. Perhaps it was a stranger, a friend, or even a family member. What was the thought behind your judgment? Maybe you thought, they should not act that way. Or, I would never do something like that. These thoughts place us in a position of superiority. They make us feel different from others, as if we are somehow better, wiser, or more correct. But if we look deeper, we see that this difference is not as great as it seems. We all have weaknesses. We all make mistakes. The person you are judging today may be struggling with something you do not see. Their actions may come from pain, confusion, or fear, just as yours sometimes do. If you had been born in their circumstances, if you had lived their life, could you be so sure you would not do the same? Even when we judge ourselves, we create this illusion of separation. We see our past self as a failure, our present self as inadequate, and our future self as something distant and unreachable. We divide ourselves into pieces, forgetting that we are always changing, always growing. In reality, there is no true separation between us. We are all walking different paths, but the destination is the same. We all seek peace, love, and happiness. We all struggle, learn, and try to do our best. If we recognize this, judgment starts to lose its power. Instead of seeing me and them, we simply see human beings, each on their own journey. So I encourage you to reflect. What judgments have made you feel separate from others? What happens when you soften those judgments? When you let go of the illusion of separation, you may find something unexpected, a sense of connection, a deeper understanding, and perhaps even a little more peace. When we judge others, we may believe we are simply observing the truth about them. We think, this person is selfish, or that person is unkind. But if we look closer, we may find that our judgments reveal more about ourselves than about the people we judge. Imagine looking into a mirror. When you see your reflection, you are not looking at something separate from you. You are looking at yourself. Judgment is often the same. The qualities we criticize in others are sometimes the very qualities we struggle with in ourselves. If we are impatient, we notice impatience in others. If we fear being wrong, we become critical of those who make mistakes. Our judgments reflect our inner world. This does not mean that every judgment is wrong. It simply means that what we see in others can be a clue to what is happening within us. If we often judge people for being too proud, is it possible that we, too, fear being seen as arrogant? If we judge someone for not working hard enough, could it be that we are struggling with our own sense of worth? Self-judgment works in the same way. When we criticize ourselves harshly, we may believe that we are holding ourselves to high standards, but often we are simply repeating the voices we have heard in the past, the expectations of parents, teachers, or society. The things we judge in ourselves may not even be our true flaws, but rather fears we have absorbed from the world around us. Recognizing this mirror of judgment is not about blaming ourselves. It is about awareness. It is about looking inward with honesty and gentleness. When we notice a strong judgment towards someone, we can pause and ask, why does this bother me so much? What does this judgment reveal about my own fears or struggles? When we see judgment as a reflection, it becomes an opportunity. Instead of letting it create distance between us and others, we can use it to understand ourselves more deeply. We can turn judgment into self-inquiry, and self-inquiry into growth. So the next time you feel judgment rising, take a moment. Look into the mirror it offers you. What does it show? What can it teach you? You may find that in understanding others, you begin to understand yourself. And in understanding yourself, you may find more compassion, not only for them, but for you as well. It is easy to recognize when we judge others. But what about when we judge ourselves? Self-judgment is one of the heaviest burdens we carry, yet it is often invisible. We become so used to criticizing ourselves that we do not even question it. We think, I should have done better. I'm not good enough. Or, I always make mistakes. These thoughts seem normal, but they quietly wear us down. Why do we judge ourselves so harshly? Some of it comes from past experiences. Perhaps we grew up in an environment where love and approval depended on how well we performed. Perhaps we were taught that mistakes are failures rather than lessons. Over time, we internalized these ideas, and they became the voice in our minds. Even when no one is watching, that voice continues to judge. The problem is that self-judgment does not help us grow. Some people believe that being hard on themselves will push them to improve. But does it really? Think about a time when you made a mistake and criticized yourself harshly. Did it help you become better? Or did it only make you feel small, unworthy, and discouraged? Growth does not come from shame. It comes from understanding, patience, and kindness. Imagine a child learning to walk. If they fall and you scold them saying, "You are so clumsy, you will never learn," will that help them? Of course not. But if you encourage them, saying, "It's okay, keep trying," they will find the strength to stand up again. We are no different. If we want to grow, we must learn to treat ourselves with the same kindness we would offer to a child. Letting go of self-judgment does not mean ignoring our mistakes. It means seeing them clearly, without unnecessary shame. It means recognizing that we are human, flawed, imperfect, always learning. Instead of saying, "I am not good enough," we can say, "I am doing my best." Instead of, "I always fail," we can say, "I am still growing." So I invite you to reflect. How do you speak to yourself? Would you speak to a loved one the same way? If not, perhaps it is time to soften your words, to be gentler with yourself. You deserve kindness, not only from others, but also from yourself. Judgment often happens so quickly that we do not even notice it. A thought appears in our mind, about someone else, about ourselves. And before we realize it, we have already accepted it as true. She is being rude. I always mess things up. These judgments feel automatic, as if they are simply facts. But are they? The first step to freeing ourselves from judgment is awareness. Without awareness, judgment controls us. With awareness, we have a choice. We can decide whether to believe the thought, whether to hold on to it, or whether to let it pass. Imagine sitting by a river, watching leaves float by. Some are large, some are small. Some move quickly, others slowly. If a leaf catches your attention, you might feel the urge to reach out and grab it. But if you simply watch, the leaf will continue down the river, disappearing from view. Our thoughts, including judgment, are like these leaves. They appear in our minds, but we do not have to hold on to them. We can let them pass. This does not mean we must force ourselves to stop judging. That would only create more struggle. Instead, we practice noticing. When a judgment appears, we take a step back and observe it. Ah, here is a judgment. No need to fight it. No need to believe it. Just notice it. With practice, something remarkable happens. The space between the thought and our reaction grows larger. Instead of being carried away by judgment, we become observers. Instead of immediately believing, this person is wrong, we recognize, I am having a judgmental thought. Instead of thinking, I am a failure, we recognize, I am judging myself. This small shift changes everything. It creates space for understanding. Judgment loses its power when we see it clearly. It no longer controls us. We realize that thoughts are just thoughts, temporary, changeable, not always true. And with this awareness, we begin to find freedom. So I invite you to reflect. Can you watch your thoughts the way you watch leaves on a river? Can you notice your judgments without grabbing onto them? If you try, you may discover something unexpected, a sense of lightness, a quiet peace, and the beginning of true clarity. Judgment often feels final. We label someone as rude, selfish, or unkind, and that becomes the way we see them. We judge ourselves as failures or not good enough, and that becomes our inner truth. But what if judgment is not an end, but a beginning? What if, instead of stopping at judgment, we used it as a doorway to understanding? Think about a time when someone judged you unfairly. Maybe they misunderstood your actions. Maybe they assumed the worst about you without knowing your true intentions. How did that feel? Did their judgment reflect who you really are? Probably not. Now consider this. When we judge others, are we truly seeing them? Or are we only seeing our assumptions? Understanding begins with curiosity. Instead of assuming, this person is rude, we can ask, what might they be experiencing right now? Instead of thinking, I always fail, we can ask, what can I learn from this? This shift does not mean we excuse harmful behavior. It simply means we look deeper. Imagine you see someone acting impatiently in a store, speaking harshly to the cashier. Your first thought might be, what a terrible person. But what if you paused? What if you considered that maybe they are going through something difficult? Grief, stress, or pain that you cannot see. This does not mean their behavior is right, but it does mean they are human, just like you. When we bring understanding to judgment, we soften. We see complexity instead of simple labels. We recognize that everyone is carrying something, wounds, fears, struggles. And when we apply this to ourselves, we begin to heal. Instead of harsh self-criticism, we ask, why do I feel this way? What do I need? We stop attacking ourselves and start supporting ourselves. Judgment creates walls. Understanding builds bridges. One separates us from others and from ourselves. The other connects us, reminding us that we are all imperfect, all learning, all growing. So the next time you catch yourself in judgment, pause. Ask a question instead of making a statement. Replace certainty with curiosity. You may find that beneath judgment, there is something much greater: compassion, wisdom, and a deeper connection to the world around you. Many people believe that to accept something means to agree with it. They fear that if they stop judging, they will lose their sense of right and wrong. But true acceptance is not the same as approval. It is simply the willingness to see things as they are, without resistance or denial. Imagine standing in the rain. You can complain about how wet and cold it is. You can wish it were sunny instead. but none of that will stop the rain. The only real choice is how you respond. You can fight it, or you can accept it. Acceptance does not mean you like the rain. It simply means you acknowledge that it is happening. The same is true for people. We may not agree with someone's behavior. We may believe they are making mistakes, but our judgment will not change them. It will only create anger and frustration within us. Acceptance means recognizing this person is as they are right now. It does not mean we support harmful actions. It simply means we stop resisting reality. Acceptance can also be applied to ourselves. We may not be who we wish to be. We may regret past actions or feel frustrated with our flaws. But rejecting ourselves will not help us grow. Acceptance means looking at ourselves honestly and saying, "This is who I am in this moment." From that place of acceptance, real change becomes possible, not from shame, but from understanding. Some people worry that without judgment, they will become passive. They think that acceptance means allowing injustice or wrongdoing. But in reality, acceptance gives us greater clarity. When we stop reacting with immediate judgment, we see situations more clearly. We respond with wisdom instead of anger. We act not from a place of resistance, but from a place of purpose. Think about a time when you judged someone harshly. Did that judgment change them, or did it only create tension within you? Now imagine if, instead of judgment, you had met the situation with calm acceptance. Would your response have been different? Acceptance is not weakness, it is strength. It is the ability to see things clearly and respond wisely. It is the understanding that not everything needs to be controlled or fixed. And when we learn to accept both others and ourselves, we free ourselves from unnecessary suffering. So I invite you to reflect. What are you resisting right now? What might happen if, just for a moment, you accepted it as it is? You may find that in acceptance, there is peace. And in peace, there is the space for real change to begin. One of the main reasons we hold on to judgment is because we believe things are fixed. We think that people do not change, that mistakes define a person, that who we are today is who we will always be. But this is not the truth. Everything, our thoughts, emotions, actions, and even our identities, is constantly changing. When we understand impermanence, judgment begins to lose its power. Think about a river. The water you see in front of you is always moving, always flowing. If you step into the river, the water that touches you is never the same for more than a moment. Life is like this. People are like this. The person you judged yesterday is not exactly the same person today, and you too are changing in every moment. Yet we often judge as if everything is permanent. We say, "He is selfish," or "She is always like this." But is that really true? If we look closely, we see that no one stays the same forever. People grow, learn, and sometimes make better choices. Even if someone has acted unkindly, that does not mean they will always be unkind. Even if we have made mistakes, that does not mean we are forever flawed. Understanding impermanence also helps us let go of self-judgment. We may feel regret for something we have done in the past, but the person who made that mistake is not the same person we are now. If we are constantly changing, then carrying shame or guilt forever does not make sense. Instead of being trapped by who we were, we can focus on who we are becoming. Impermanence does not mean we ignore responsibility. It simply means we do not define people or ourselves by a single moment. It means we allow room for growth. It means we recognize that just as the seasons change, so do we. So I invite you to reflect. What judgments do you hold as if they are permanent? What happens if you remember that everything, including yourself, is always changing. When we see through the lens of impermanence, judgment softens, and we begin to meet the world with more patience, openness, and understanding. Letting go of judgment does not happen instantly. It is not something we can force. Just as a tree does not grow overnight, our ability to meet the world with acceptance and understanding takes time. The key to this process is patience, both with others and with ourselves. Think about the people you judge. Maybe they act in ways that frustrate you, or perhaps they hold beliefs that seem completely wrong to you. It is easy to want them to change quickly, to expect them to see things the way you do. But real change does not happen because we demand it. It happens over time, through experience, reflection, and growth. Imagine a flower that has not yet bloomed. If you try to force it open, you will only damage it. But if you wait, if you give it the right conditions, water, sunlight, and time, it will bloom naturally. People are the same. Just because someone is not who we think they should be right now, does not mean they will never grow. The same patience must be applied to ourselves. We may catch ourselves judging others and feel frustrated that we cannot stop. We may struggle with self-criticism and wonder why we cannot simply be kinder to ourselves. But expecting immediate change is just another form of judgment. We must allow ourselves time to unlearn old habits and to develop new ways of seeing. Patience does not mean we do nothing. It means we continue to practice. Each time we notice a judgmental thought and choose to let it go, we take a step forward. Each time we replace criticism with curiosity, we grow. Slowly, over time, our relationship with judgment changes. And so I invite you to reflect. Can you be patient with others as they find their own path? Can you give yourself the same kindness and time to grow? When we stop expecting instant transformation and allow life to unfold naturally, we begin to move toward true non-judgment. And in that space, we find greater peace, not just with others, but within ourselves. Judgment is a habit, one that we have carried for a long time. It gives us a sense of control, a feeling that we understand the world. But in reality, judgment does not bring peace. It creates tension, frustration, and suffering, both within us and in our relationships with others. The way to find peace is to let go. Letting go of judgment does not mean we stop thinking critically. It does not mean we ignore our values or stop making decisions. Instead, it means we release the unnecessary weight that judgment places on our hearts. It means we stop holding on so tightly to our opinions about others and ourselves. Imagine carrying a heavy bag everywhere you go. It slows you down, makes you tired, and distracts you from the beauty around you. But what if you realized that you did not have to carry it? What if you could simply set it down? Judgment is that heavy bag. We may feel attached to it, but we do not need it. And when we put it down, we feel lighter. This letting go is not something we do just once. It is a practice. Each time we notice a judgmental thought, we have a choice. Do we hold on to it, or do we release it? At first, it may not be easy. The habit of judgment is strong, but with time, it becomes more natural. We begin to see the world with more openness. We begin to feel a quiet sense of ease. Letting go also means trusting life. We often judge because we want things to be different. We think, this person should not be like that, or I should not have made that mistake. But the truth is, life unfolds as it does. People grow at their own pace. We make mistakes and learn from them. When we accept this, we stop struggling against reality. And in that acceptance, there is peace. So I invite you to reflect. What judgments are you holding on to? What might happen if you let them go? If you try, even just for a moment, you may notice something surprising. A sense of relief, a feeling of freedom, and in that space, you may find the peace you have been looking for all along. Letting go of judgment is not just an idea, it is a way of living. It is something we practice in our daily interactions, in our thoughts, and in the way we treat ourselves. When we choose to live without unnecessary judgment, life becomes lighter. We experience less frustration, less resentment, and more openness toward others and ourselves. But how do we make this a part of our daily lives? It begins with awareness. Each day, we have countless moments where judgment appears. When we see a stranger on the street, when we interact with a coworker, when we reflect on our own actions. If we begin to notice these judgments, we create space. Instead of reacting immediately, we pause. Instead of assuming, we observe. It also requires patience. We will not suddenly become free of judgment overnight. Sometimes we will still feel frustrated, still catch ourselves labeling others or criticizing ourselves. That is natural. What matters is that we keep practicing. Each time we let go of judgment, even just a little, we take a step toward greater peace. Living without judgment does not mean we stop caring about right and wrong. It does not mean we ignore harmful actions or pretend that everything is perfect. Instead, it means we meet life with understanding rather than resistance. We see people as they are, not just as we want them to be. We accept ourselves in the same way. Imagine walking through life with an open hand rather than a clenched fist. Judgment tightens us, makes us rigid. Letting go allows us to be flexible, to adapt, to move through life with ease. We begin to appreciate people as they are, instead of constantly wishing they were different. We begin to appreciate ourselves, even with our imperfections. So I invite you to reflect. What would it feel like to move through your day without judgment? To simply observe, to accept, to let go. If you try, even for a short time, you may find that life becomes softer, lighter, and filled with a quiet kind of joy. And in that space, true freedom begins. As we come to the end of this journey together, I hope these reflections have offered you a new way of seeing, one that is gentler, more open, and less burdened by judgment. Letting go of judgment is not about ignoring what is right or wrong. It is about meeting life with clarity and understanding, rather than resistance and criticism. It is about choosing peace over unnecessary struggle. This is not an easy practice, nor is it something that happens overnight. There will be moments when judgment arises, when frustration returns, when old habits resurface. That is completely natural. What matters is not perfection, but awareness. Each time we recognize judgment and allow it to pass without grasping onto it, we take another step toward inner freedom. Living without judgment does not mean withdrawing from the world. It means engaging with it more fully, seeing others with greater compassion, and treating ourselves with the kindness we deserve. It means accepting that we are all learning, all changing, all walking our own unique paths. When we stop carrying the weight of judgment, we create space. Space for peace, for connection, and for a deeper appreciation of life as it is. For those of you who have taken the time to listen, reflect, and share your thoughts, I am truly grateful. Your presence, your openness, and your support mean a great deal. To those who have liked this video, subscribed to the channel, left a comment, or sent a super thanks. Thank you. Your kindness and engagement help to create a space where we can continue exploring these ideas together. May your days be filled with understanding rather than judgment, with acceptance rather than resistance. and may you walk through life with a heart that is light, open, and at peace.